Hi, and welcome to BUSI 1010, Critical Thinking and Ethics. It's really great to join you. I've prepared a series of short lecturettes just to help you with your reading and just to kind of guide you through the course material. And so these are additional to the reading you've done. And so we'll get going. I wanted to just talk about the course outline and just go through that with you and briefly mention a few things that are tied to this. Because this is an online course, of course, it's very different to an in-class session, and so we have two threaded discussions which run midway through the course, and you'll see those in your course outline. And threaded discussions are where you as a student contribute to the discussion question by simply writing down your thoughts and your ideas about the question and then responding to other students who post their thoughts or responses to what you've written down. We're also going to have 4 Socratic discussion sessions, and those will be done through Adobe Connect. So no matter where you are in Canada, we'll be able to meet together. There will be 3 groups of 10 students, and we'll meet for an hour and we'll discuss the key questions around the chapter that you've read. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's a great time of learning and interaction and discussion. You have 1 chapter per week to read. I cut the reading down because I know that most students are really busy, and I really want you to retain the information that you're reading. You'll also have a video clip that you will watch, and sometimes more than 1 video clip, but certainly 1 video clip that you'll watch, and you'll want to journal. I have a journal outline. You'll need to journal your findings both from the video clip and from your reading. There is a final exam for you to take. There's no midterm, but there certainly is a final exam, and I'll guide you through preparing for that so that you'll be well prepared. The thing I'm really excited about in this course, and I think is going to be tremendously helpful to you, is the self-development assignment, in which you will look at various dimensions of developing critical thinking in terms of who you are as a person. And so it's going to be a great assignment for you to undertake, and that's worth 25% of your course mark. So let's launch into our first session together. Just a few key things I want to mention to you. What you see on the screen here is the Tank Man. In 1989 in Tiananmen Square, 1 million students gathered together to protest the rising fees, the lack of representation in government, and concerns over the cost of living. The Tank Man, we never know actually what happened to him. If you got the actual picture of Tiananmen Square, you'd see that there were about probably 50 to 80 tanks lined up behind these 4. These 4 are the only ones in the picture. But this student, together with his many other students, took a stand and basically wanted to protest in Tiananmen Square. Tiananmen Square is very famous. There's been a lot of protests there over the years. But the then president of China decided to clamp down with militaristic force. And so anywhere from hundreds to thousands of students were injured and killed through the use of assault rifles and tanks as they marched on Tiananmen Square. Why do I bring this picture before you? I want you to think about, what was this man feeling as he stood before these tanks? And what would give a man such courage to stand and face this machinery, almost knowing that he was facing certain death? And as I looked at this picture again this morning, I thought to myself, there's really not much chance to move out of the way in terms of where he's positioned himself. When that tank starts moving, he's probably going to be crushed. And of course, we never know what happened in the standoff, because after this, there was a clampdown on publications. But what moves a group of students to think through the situation that they're in and to take action? And critical thinking is not just about logical thinking, but it's also thinking that moves us to take action. And so critical thinking provides us with a crucial set of skills for life, and we need these skills to help us make decisions and resolve issues that arise in our everyday lives. We live in a very complex world, and there are issues that face us every single day. For instance, what should we do with a mayor who is taking crack cocaine? Is that okay for the citizenry? Is that a good example? Is he breaking the law? Does it matter that he's breaking the law? How do we remove him from office? Should we remove him from office? Critical thinking provides us with a set of skills to really map those issues and think them through logically and not just in terms of emotion. Critical thinking, like logic, requires learning in terms of how to think. and rather than simply what to think. So often, politicians and media will try to shape what we think. We need to learn how to think. And so the word critical thinking really comes from the Greek word kritikos, which means discernment, the ability to see in between, to look at an issue and gauge it. To be able to look at an issue and unpeel it and understand all of the factors that contribute to that issue and how to think logically through judging and decision making in terms of that issue. So logic is a crucial part of critical thinking, and it requires good analytical skills. Logic is defined as the study of the methods and principles that are used in distinguishing correct and good arguments from incorrect arguments. You know, when we use the word argument, you may think that that's two people shouting at each other. One great philosopher said, the goal of argumentation is not to prove that we're right, but is to discover the truth. And so when we come to critical thinking and ethics, we define argumentation or arguments as well-constructed, logical thoughts that have merit and factual basis, rather than two people or a group of people shouting at each other, which is more oratory or rhetoric than it is argumentation. So critical thinking requires applying the rules of logic as well as gathering evidence surrounding the issue and evaluating it and coming up with a plan of action. So what are the critical issues that surround this area that I need to make a decision on, and how do I evaluate it and then come up with a plan of action? In contrast to arguments based on logic, arguments based on opinion are defined as beliefs based solely on personal feelings rather than reason or facts. And whilst we're all entitled to our opinions, arguments based solely on opinion are not necessarily reasonable, nor do they encourage us to make good decisions, but actually often cause us to make poor choices or to act in ways that we may later regret. It's really important to research and to think about and to look at and to study an issue than just simply to make a decision based upon our opinion. Uninformed opinions can be really harmful to both us and to society. So as a college student in your first year, you're coming in as a university student, and there are three ways of thinking that they've discovered that you probably have, and you embark with dualism. And that means that in your mind things are either totally right or totally wrong. And that's where we begin in terms of our critical thinking. And we often find that then, because of that, we tend to look for those things which support our argument rather than thinking around the argument and determining, is what I think and my opinion on this actually true and actually beneficial? We move then, many students move as they have all of these conflicting thoughts coming into their mind, and as their worldview begins to be challenged by so many other divergent realities and facts and cultures. Many times as you move into a university environment, different perspectives and learnings on things, students can move from dualism, where they see black and white and right and wrong, to a realm of relativism, where basically they say, it doesn't really matter, it's your opinion, everybody's right and everybody's wrong. If you believe it's right, good for you. And oftentimes people say that really this is laziness on the part of students because they don't want to work through those things. And then finally you move to commitment, which is the ability to say, I have thought this position through, I've studied it, I've researched it, and this is what I believe. And yes, I'll hold to this as my belief system whilst being able to listen to others and critically engage in what they think. And so I want to run very quickly with you through, we'll look at this more through the course, but what are the 8 characteristics of a good critical thinker? Number one, he has analytical skills. An ability, he or she has an ability to analyze and provide logical support for beliefs. Number 2, communication and literacy skills. The ability to communicate what you believe and what you think, and to write that down effectively in terms of communication. Many times we might hold a good position, we might really have logically thought this through, but we fall down in our capacity to communicate that in a way that people can understand and work with us. And then our research and inquiry skills, which will grow as you develop as a university student. You'll learn how to research and how to look at an issue, how to write down a problem statement, and then how to come at that problem statement from every side. You'll need flexibility and tolerance of ambiguity. Oftentimes, things are not right or wrong. They can be best and good. And we have to determine sometimes not choosing what is right and wrong, but what is best over what is good. And there is a lot of ambiguity in our world today in terms of our existence. We need open-minded skepticism. This term was coined by René Descartes, in which he said, I'm going to approach a problem with skepticism, believing that it's false, and then lay the burden of proof upon proving that it's true. And sometimes we have to come at our problems with that open-minded skepticism and really critique. Creative problem skills, problem-solving skills, the ability to engage in solving a problem in a creative way, thinking outside of the box, not doing the same old, but thinking through how can I come up with an original solution to this complex problem. Attentiveness, mindfulness, and curiosity. One of the great realities of leaders is that they need to be mindful. One of the great realities in our world today is that we need to be mindful, we need to be aware of what is going on around us, and often we suffer from a media fatigue as so much is coming at us as we realize there's so much going on in the world today. We need to be attentive and mindful and pay attention to those things that affect our lives and the lives of our citizens in our country. We need collaborative learning skills, the ability to engage, and many times I may disagree with you, but it's much better for me to disagree with you having understood you than simply to disagree with you because I have an opinion and I haven't heard you. And so it's really important to learn to collaborate together and work together. And our Socratic discussions and our threaded discussions will help you do that. Good critical thinkers take charge of their lives and their choices. They don't leave that to someone else, and they don't blame someone else. That often can lead to anger and frustration, a sense of a lack of power. In fact, poverty is not the absence of material goods, it's the absence of power to change your position, and that can breed great anger in our lives. And so you need to develop a rational life plan, which is what the self-assessment tool will help you do. It's kind of like a flight plan. Knowing the destination, knowing where you are, thinking through how you're going to get there, the fuel you need, the passengers on board, the weight load, taking all of those things into account, and then embarking on the journey of life to be successful through critical thinking. I want to finish off with this diagram of the 3 levels of thinking: experience, interpretation, and analysis. And if you're going to be a critical thinker, you need to engage in these 3 levels of thinking. But you need to be careful. Peter Senge talks about the myth of learning from experience. And I want to illustrate this by the fact that 15 years ago, my wife and I came to Canada, and we went to a coffee franchise. We walked into the coffee franchise, and it was filled with cigarette smoke. We ordered 2 coffees and 2 chocolate brownies. We then walked out to our car, being able to breathe fresh air again. Took a sip of the coffee. It was probably 3 days old. It was the most disgusting cup of coffee I've ever had. And then I decided, well, at least I can offset the disgusting taste of this coffee with this brownie. I took a bite of the brownie, or tried to. It was so stale that I could hardly bite through it. Well, I want to tell you, 15 years later, my wife and I have never yet been back to that coffee franchise because we had a negative experience. And that experience then determined the lens through which we view that coffee franchise. What we should have done is tried out 10 of those coffee franchises, and then if all 10 of them had stale coffee, stale chocolate brownies, in smoke-filled room, we could then have been able to say, yeah, we need to not go to that coffee franchise. So we need to be careful. Experience is one way that we learn to think critically, and we can learn from our experiences, but that shouldn't be the only determinant, because there is the myth of learning from experience. No 2 situations are ever exactly the same. And so we need to apply interpretation, or hermeneutics. We need to have a heuristic through which we determine and understand our experience and look at that and frame it and do some research around it. As I mentioned, we should have piled up a lot more evidence in terms of our experience. And once we've embarked on interpreting and understanding that experience, we then have to go through analysis. And sometimes our interpretation and our analysis may lead us to a different opinion, and that brings in resistance. And sometimes that leads other people to a different opinion, and there'll be resistance shown in anger, avoidance, and many other ways. So those are just some things that I hope will help you with your reading, with your thinking, and with our Socratic discussion. Thanks so much.